Done with our joinery class. We're going to start with Bob. He's going to go over a PowerPoint talking about different joints, and as some of the joints come up, Gerry is going to show us the ones that he's physically got a lot of examples of joints out there, and then we're going to start the actual the methods of joinery that are more of a modern type, you know, that is going to be covered by Ricky on using that guy, yeah, on using dovetails, and then Festool. He's going to show the daddy domino, and I have the baby domino over here. So we'll show, you know, he's going to show some of the differences. He can show the features that he found on that he does not like and what he likes about it. Things that are sort of a hindrance trying to use one that big. Mine is a smaller size. You know, mine was a fortune. His was a fortune and a half. So anyway, we'll talk about all that, and then when we get done with that portion, then we'll cover all the different joints and stuff in here, mainly Gerry and myself talking back and forth about, you know, the different type of joinery. And you know, we'll start off with the simpler stuff that's been done for pegs and dowels for years, and how it's improved over the years to different stages. So let's go for Bob.
All righty, thank you much. And for those who may not know me, I'm Bob Brokaw, and I'm going to talk to you about some of the joints and joinery, most of which I have used. The slideshow started here. There we go. Okay, this is kind of a lead-in to it to show some exceptional joints here. That one on the lower left is called a houndstooth dovetail. I've not done one of those. As a matter of fact, it looks a little bit rough. I would imagine it's probably got to be hand cut instead of machine cut. The one next to it is a bridle joint, believe it or not. I took a look at that and I thought, that kind of looks like one of these devil's pitchfork kind of things. But it is actually a functional three-way bridle joint. I've done two ways before. Then there's the dovetail to end all dovetails over there on the far right, and sample joints that you can't see up at the beginning. Okay, the first joint that a woodworker usually encounters, you know, when they're first learning, is butt joint. You know, simple, easy, but traditionally quite weak. Gerry, if you want to show your example that you brought along there.
This first of all is a simple butt joint. There's nothing in there except glue. And I did this last night because I don't really make butt joints this way. All right, and one of the things about this is it's fairly weak. You could probably break it if you tried. And the other thing that jumped out at me was, after I clamped this thing up, I had the pieces aligned, and they shifted. Yeah, shifted laterally. It would have helped if they had at least been pinned to hold it to keep it from sliding. Because of the glue, it'll slide with the glue in the joints. If you're not careful, I can go ahead and pass that around. The next variation I came up with is sort of the same thing, except it's got screws in it. Now, I left the screws exposed so you could see them, but what most people will do with this kind of joint is they'll countersink the screws, and then they'll put a plug over the top of the screw so you don't see the screw head. Okay, but I left it like this just to, and that's much stronger, just having the screws, or it could be nails. Some people just use pin nails to drive through there, not quite as strong as the screws, okay?
Yeah, the fillers behind you.
Yeah, you got the plugs.
Those are some of the plugs.
Oh, here's some of the plugs that you might use, but you'd have to drill in deeper so that the head is below the surface before you put the plugs in, because the plugs are fairly thick. Next step up is a rabbited style of joint. And that's where you cut a rabbet in one piece, and then you glue the other piece into the rabbet. Now, the only advantage of that is you've got more glue surface than you do with a straight butt joint. Okay, so that's a little stronger. Still not the strongest kind of butt joint, though. A slight variation on that, I don't know if you can see this on the camera very well, maybe that side's easier to see, is a rabbet with an angle, okay, and you typically cut that kind of thing with a router bit. And again, the only advantage to this over just having a simple rabbet is more glue surface. Okay, and they do have a variation of this called a lock joint. Did you?
Yeah, I've got lock joint covered in here.
And I've got the bits for doing a lock joint, but I don't have an example for it. But the lock joint has a more complicated design than that. Oh, here's one.
That's the bit for it.
That is
Oh, that's
not
just-
glued together.
Yes.
Not glued together. Okay, that's good. There's a lock joint. And you have to cut that with a special router bit. And setting these things up is a bit of a challenge, I found, anyway.
The big advantage of your lock joint, though, instead of a straight joint, you have lots of gluing surface on there, you know, with it going back and forth like that.
Lots of gluing surface, and if you set it up right, they're self-aligning. You know, you don't have to have a lot of clamps on that, because it's not gonna slide. It might slide laterally on you, but it's not gonna slide horizontally. Okay, go ahead and pass that around. You wanna pass this on?
Yeah, you can, sure.
All right, this is not glued together. All right, so be careful with it.
What would be some of the uses for a joint like that?
It's just a stronger miter joint. By the way, I failed to mention that. This one's a miter joint. This is just straight miters. It is a butt joint. The only advantage to a miter is, you got more surface area for glue. But that's still a relatively weak joint.
Yeah. If you're making something like a keepsake box, rather than seeing the edge of one, the ingrain on one and something else as a butt joint, you put it together there, it's a nicer fit. And like you said, those just stay there. By the time, it's just luck that they stay in the right position and clamping it down when you're done, because you don't want to use pin nails or anything like that. But that other lock joint, it's going to end up right in that same position perfect. And it stays together really easy while it dries.
Is there a minimum thickness for the board to use the lock joint? Do they have smaller bits to do that?
They don't have smaller bits. You just adjust the height of the bit.
Half inch to the eighth. The board is very thin, you can't.
Well, it's real thin. You can't do that.
Right.
Yeah, you would have to
I
find a
mean, something
special,
like this, you couldn't do a lot joint because it's too thin.
somebody out there may make a specialty bit for doing a lock joint in a 1/4 inch piece.
I think somewhere in the slides we're getting to a part that is showing a, yeah, somewhere. You do this on the corner, you cut your miter at an angle, and then you will cut a slot in it, and you put a spline in like here, which is gonna lock it in together, it's a little variation of it. And then you'd have your spline that you just put down the center of it.
Yeah, in other words,
and hold
you
it
cut a
together.
slot through the corner and glue a spline in the corner and then strengthen that corner. Okay. And by the way, one of the advantages to doing the mitered, if you look at this closely, the grain is matched all the way around except for one corner. You can cut your miter so that you match the grain. You only have one corner that doesn't match. You want to say something else?
Yep. In addition to what Gerry was pointing out about the book matching going around the thing, what we've done here to talk to design a little bit is we've taken a joint that is usually not very strong, which is a miter. By the time you combine 4 of those, the major problem that you got then is racking. If you rack the thing, it's going to collapse. By putting a trapped bottom in here, such as what's there, you've stopped the racking now. So you've got a really nice looking box that's got good integrity, which is what the goal is. And then Gerry was pointing out to me that he's got nice rabbeting on the top there, all ready to receive a top that he hasn't gotten around to.
I haven't found the proper piece of wood yet.
Yeah.
This has only been sitting around. Oh, by the way, this is designed, if you've never seen this before, so that when you get the top on, you take your table saw and you cut through the outside and it just drops into place. That's why there's a groove on the inside, if you've never seen that.
Say that one more time.
Try it again.
All right, you cut the groove on the inside. You remember where that groove is, or you
sure.
measure it, and then you go on the outside and you cut a groove on the outside, and if you do it right, the top just drops over the dado that you cut through the outside, because it cuts into the very corner of the inside
Show the
groove.
groove on the camera. I wasn't seeing the groove.
Yeah, I didn't point that out before, but that's what that's designed to do, is so that the top is contiguous with the bottom, and it just drops into place once you cut it out. But you gotta line up your saw blade correctly. I have done that before and not quite get it overlapped. You gotta get it overlapped, or else it won't go. I'll pass that around. Sort of next step up is this kind of thing. Dowels, all right? I've not used dowels in years, and in fact, this is my doweling jig. It's an old Stanley, and I'm looking at it and going, okay, how do you line this thing up? Could not remember. Fortunately, I still have the directions.
Ooh.
But to give you an idea of how old this thing is, the directions look like a piece of parchment paper. So I had to pull that out just so I could align this, and it's got, according to the size of the dowel and the size of your board, you figure out where you align, and I didn't quite get it centered.
Just for the fun of it, how many languages is that in?
One, English. And it's got various guides, various size guides that you replace with. There are fancier doweling jigs around now.
Good job.
That one's probably 40 years old anyway. And I didn't quite get that one lined up right because I was in a hurry last night. Okay. Sort of the ultimate would be dovetails. And we'll address that in more detail later on. Ricky's going to talk about dovetails. This is just an example. Okay, and this is pretty strong. You really, about the strongest design, maybe short of this kind of thing, which is very similar, but straight cuts. And those are finger joints. This is another example of finger joints. By the way, I don't know whether how this one was cut. This was cut on a table saw with a jig.
It was cut on a table saw with a jig.
Yeah. Once you get these set up, they go pretty fast. And that's a pretty strong joint because you got lots of glue surface there.
What do you call it?
Long grain.
Finger joints. Or
Finger
box
joints.
Or box joints, some people call them box joints. Yeah.
It is long grain to long grain.
And if you want to put that together, Peachtree's got these boards out there that you can do the box joints for $10 each sitting out there. I can tell you because I bought one today and put it out in my van already.
They're gone. Yeah, we can talk about that more in detail. Matter of fact, we've done a box class before where you
Right.
go through all the joints you might use on a small box like this.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think Gerry and I were the ones that did that box class. And you turn 2 engineers loose on
Rob and
on a
I
class like that. You got to.
Rob and I also did a class on that. We had 8 boxes, and out of 8, I lost the measurements on one.
And Jim did a class on the boxes too, so we did a lot of boxes.
By the way, this is not glued, it will collapse. Be careful about
The
how
finger
you...
one, that was the mailbox class, right?
Yeah, that was mailbox, I think.
Yeah,
This is done on the table, so.
that was using
done
the
on table
mailbox
saw, yeah.
doors on little safes and stuff.
All right, I think that's it for box, for butt joints.
Arnie, to continue on with the slideshow there, here I'm showing an example of a half lap joint. You won't see that too terribly often in furniture building. It's fairly common in construction. Once you cut basically 2 rabbets and put them together with some glue, it does make for a rather effective glue joint. And it's a strong joint once that long grain to long grain surface area is glued together. Okay, here's another joint of a bridle joint, and I see here where Larry brought an example in. Well, a couple of examples.
A couple of examples here. This one I've done, and this is something that been worked on in Rob's shop.
Yeah, this is the long piece there is a prototype from a lot of you have heard. A lot of you have heard about this thing called a Glancy bench, where we made a couple of benches for the Glancy hospital system. And there was a good bit of contention about that bridle joint. We had a visiting instructor here at one point that told us he was a furniture maker extraordinaire, Paul Search, and he after he reviewed the design on the thing, he all of a sudden lit up and went off when he saw that the end grain was going to be, the end grain of the intersecting piece was going to be showing. He says, that's a bad design. He said, it's unattractive. So we examined a bunch of alternatives as to how to cut a blind bridle joint. After exercising some brain power there for a couple hours, we decided that was just entirely too complicated, so the finished product wound up with a exposed end grain, as are a bunch of examples in this slideshow here.
I'll pass this around, and the advantage of this again is increased glue area.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's a pretty strong joint.
Okay, here's another example of a dowel joint like what Gerry talked about. This is a butt joint where the 2 ends are stuck together. Now there's virtually no strength whatsoever in gluing end grain to end grain together. But by the time you add 3 dowels in there, and those dowels are ribbed, which again serves to increase the glue area. So by the time you get that thing together, what would ordinarily be a not so strong of a joint, suddenly you've got a lot of strength involved there.
By the way, there's another reason they're ribbed. That's to let the glue out of the pocket.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, and you got too much glue in there, you'll never get that dowel in that pocket, seated in the bottom.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about that again when we get much further in here. Okay, then as we go further on here, we get into finger joints. These are machine cut actually with a router bit or a jointer bit, and these again are increase the surface area to increase the strength.
Again, Bob, a good example, if you go to the big box store and buy a 2x2 or a 1x2,
Yep.
you'll often see them in those pieces of wood because they use scrap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the concept of the finger joint, I believe, started out in mid-60s. I tried to find the history of it and couldn't. But I know back in the early 60s, when one of the many times that the price of wood has spiked a lot, the people that were making molding trim for houses, what they would do is they would take the scrap pieces that were left over, and they had woodmongers that would go to major developments and so forth and pick up the scrap and take it back to the mill. They would machine finger joints into there, rejoin it, and then turn around and sell it. The only disadvantage to that is it's got to be painted. You can't do a natural finish on it and have it look like much. Okay, this is a bigger finger joint, or as Gerry mentioned earlier, some people refer to them as box joints. They're done on a table saw with a jig. I think we had a class here a number of years ago where we did shop-made jigs for box joints, and I think we had about 7 or 8 examples of it. Okay, Gerry also mentioned and showed the dovetail joint. You can see on there, perhaps you can see the wording on there, but the part that is sticking out is referred to as a tail. The other part that is not tail shaped, but it's kind of a wedge shaped, is called a pin. And then you got a number of shoulders, you got angles. The 2 typical angles for making these dovetail joints is 5 degree or 7 degree, depending on the hardness of the wood is how you determine which one you're going to use. Okay, the variation off of that dovetail theme is what is referred to as a half-blind dovetail. In other words, the dovetail does not go all the way through. Uses the same router bit as the traditional dovetail. The only thing is you only need 1 router bit and 1 setup with this, where you can cut the face board and the side at the same time with the proper jig. This is fairly common construction these days in kitchen furniture, kitchen cabinetry and whatnot. It's a very productive joint, where with 1 operation you can cut a whole corner. You could cut the face and the side at one time. So basically you need 4 passes, and you've pretty much got a kitchen drawer complete.
One advantage of that, though, that one on the top right, if you're looking at a drawer itself, instead of having the dovetail showing out there, it'll be all closed just like that, so it looks a lot better from just a point of view of looking at it than seeing the side view of that. When I look at a drawer in my shop, everyone's got a dovetail, because if we didn't, somebody's going to come up and ask us if we dovetailed it. but in the front, the half-blind dovetail, when you look at it from there, you have a nice surface. You're not interrupting it. So that's a good reason for that.
A variation off of that I have used in several pieces of furniture is that you take and on this edge here, you wind up cutting a rabbet to recess that blind dovetail, which actually kind of creates a face. You can then trim that edge a little bit and get that to become a flush-mounted drawer. So you're creating a finished face at that time just by adding the additional feature of a rabbet on that edge before you start cutting the dovetail.
Do you find a significant strength difference at all between half-blind and regular, or is it more of a cosmetic thing?
It's primarily production and as well as cosmetic, because to cut a regular dovetail on a jig, you got to put the 2 pieces in separately. So you're actually making 2 different cuts. With the half blind, you can do both at the same time. You're putting the one board on the face of the jig, another board through the back, and you're just making a single deep cut. But it's it's a cosmetic thing as to whether you want the end of the dovetail to show. An awful lot of these joints here are showing off your workmanship. That's the whole purpose of it, as well as being functional and strong by the time you're done.
Is that hum coming from the speaker back there?
Sounds like a German one up there. I think that's a projector.
Oh, the projector. Okay.
Projector, yeah. Yeah, it's a fan in the projector, I think.
Okay.
Okay, now we're going to get into some more complicated dovetail joints. You can see the one on the left there, 2 tails and 1 pin and 2 half pins. And then you got the still more complicated dovetail joint on the right. And if somebody can actually cut one of those and put it together, I want to see it. I could figure out how you could cut it, but I could not figure out how you put it together unless you split the board somehow. Okay, I just found that amusing as I was going through gathering pictures for this. Okay, now then as we move along, you ask yourself, what can I do with some of this newfound knowledge? This is a scaled up version of what you could do with a box joint. It's actually strong enough, you can use a box joint to make on a large size that looks like about a 3/4 inch finger on a finger joint, or a box joint. You can actually make a piece of furniture just using that joint. This one here looks like about 1.25 inch, 1.5 material. So, okay, moving on there, here's a dovetail joint in the corner of a piece. This is again where you're showing off your workmanship when you go to put that thing together. Okay, then we get into another popular joint. This would be the dado joint, where you stick the end of the board into that dado joint with some glue. The result is a really, really strong joint. Some advantages here: if you're making the piece, any part of it out of plywood, if you've got any kind of chips on the corner, you're now recessing that corner down into that dado, and if you can't see it, it doesn't exist.
Here's a much more, now for kitchen cabinets, as Ricky will attest, coat rail and stile. And you have to have special router joints for this kind of, router bits for this kind of thing. They're usually matched. Okay, so that, let's flip it over here. It cuts the profile and the groove all in one pass. Same thing with the end, but you're cutting end grain when you do that. So you have to be careful about chip out. And then the panel can either be flat like this, or it can be raised.
Rob, show them the bits.
I'm sorry, what?
The bits are back.
The bits that are involved.
Oh,
And all Rob's mounted miner table were cut like that.
yeah. I actually like the flat panels, but in kitchen cabinets, you often see the raised panels. Again, they do that stuff commercially, like the dovetail joints on the drawers. So they have these big, huge machines that do that kind of thing, and they typically do it fairly quickly. And there's all kinds of profiles you can get, depending on what you like. This is just an OG here, but there's different other profiles for that kind of thing.
Yeah. On the Freud line, usually when you're looking at these, there'll be pictures of the profile that you will get out of this thing, or the profiles that are possible with this kind of a bit. So just a little bit of advertising there.
Those bit sets are not cheap.
Yeah,
That red bit set there is $127.
okay. I was going to guess 150, but okay. Back to the dado joint for a minute. One of the advantages, significant advantage to that resulting joint, is by the time you recess that thing into the dado, you've then got an extremely good joint there that will support a lot of weight. So your new limitation on the amount of weight that you can put on a shelf is how much deflection you get out of the piece of wood. So you typically don't want to use any more than maybe a 30-inch shelf. 36, and it's going to start bowing in the middle if you put books on it. Okay, moving on to yet the next joint is the tongue and groove, as it's referred to. This is typically done with siding and various other things. I think Jerry's got an example of that here.
This was actually done for a top to a blanket chest. It's thinner wood, and originally I tried to glue that together with butt joints, and it didn't work. In fact, if they weren't aligned, it's the problem. I got where I had cauls, they were aligned. In between, no, they weren't. And so because the wood itself was not flat, because it was so thin I couldn't really flatten it. So what I did was I cut the tongue and groove in here, and when I put the boards together and clamped them, now they're aligned. All right, and can glue them that way, and I got more glue surface also. If it's thicker wood, you don't necessarily have to do this for a panel. You could use biscuits or the best two dominoes, you know. In fact, I built a dining room table before with the wood about this thick, and I just use biscuits to keep those aligned. And the only reason you want to do that is you don't want to do a lot of sanding once you got this panel together, you know. Because especially in this case, the panel was wider, when I was done, was wider than my drum sander. There we go. It's not exactly centered. Generally, you would want that centered so it wouldn't matter, but typically what you do is you mark the face somehow. I usually put a couple of lines across there because I know that's the face that goes, the edges that go together. Yeah. But it was the only way I could find to align those panels that were that thin and keep them aligned when I glue them together.
But prior to the existence of dominoes and biscuits and that kind of thing, that was how you would join multiple boards together to make a wider flat surface. Okay, as we move forward into the joints, we get into a bow tie joint. This is fairly common in Asia to make joints like this. It's also used in natural edge furniture. When you've got a split going from one end, this is a way that you can arrest the motion for that split to want to continue. I've not tried one of these before, but you know, it looks like just a big giant dovetail. Also, I have seen some people get a bit carried away. Rather than using a bow tie like that, they will use various animal designs and, you know, exotic designs to be able to pull the thing together and add interest to the piece. Yes, sir.
Did you purchase those bow ties?
I believe you can, but most people make them. Okay, I think Gary's got some examples of mortise and tenon here. There's two popular ways of doing that. One is just the straight mortise and tenon. It's a way of strengthening a butt joint and adding glue area.
And these were practice ones, you know. You want to do this kind of thing, you want to sort of practice how you do this. And this was done with a drill press, chisels, to get the mortise. That's the traditional way. All right, in fact, it was done with hand drills originally, you know, the old bracing bit. I did it on the drill press. You drill a series of holes and try to get them as overlapping as possible. By the way, Forstner bits are good at that. The regular twist drill bit is not so good at overlapping, although you can do it on a drill press. Can't do it freehand, but then you have to chop out the sides of the mortise with a chisel. Then this is done on the table saw. You can either just cut these shoulders and then take the waist out with a chisel, or if you've got a jig for it on your table saw, they do make mortise jigs that run across your table saw. And typically what you do on a table saw is you cut it this way first. You cut the faces first, and then you lay it down and you cut the shoulders. Okay, is the way it's done on the table saw. Can be done with a router. Okay, you're taking an awful lot of wood off there though, so you have to have multiple passes on a router. But when it goes together, and this one's a little bit sloppy, you typically like a little tighter joint than that, but you're going to glue it anyway. All right. You can't have it too loose if you're going to use traditional PVA grooves because they don't really fill gaps real well. But if you use something like Gorilla Glue or epoxy, it will fill the gaps. Okay. That's typically like a rail and a stile for an exterior door. And you typically have some sort of profile cut on that, but that's the way a lot of exterior doors are made. So I'll pass that one around. Say it's not tight. If you got a corner joint though, you want to do this kind of thing. Very similar, but you got the cutout at the top, and that's so that the tendon doesn't show on the top surface. It's also for strength. It's less likely to tear out due to racking if you got some additional material there on the end. Okay. And again, this was just a practice. I was going to make an exterior door one time till I found out what you could buy a nice door for. Okay, let somebody in Brazil do it, and I'll just pay them. So I decided that was a lot more work than I wanted to do. Rob can attest to that.
Yeah, we went through the same exercise at Rob's shop.
Interior dining better.
What's this, a dovetail, sliding dovetail?
Sliding dovetail is what I see.
Fancy push block for table saw. You gotta really want to be able to show off to do sliding dovetail.
Actually, we did several of those, because if you take a regular block like that and you run it through and mess it up, you can just pull the handle off, slide it on there, and they're not glued, they just live in place.
Oh, okay, so you can replace that piece.
Yeah, we made probably 7 or 8 of them, different width, different height.
And once you got the dovetail set up on your router, that was a piece of cake.
Yeah, yeah. You want to pass that around?
Sure.
What holds it together?
It just slides in there.
We just tapped it into the dovetail, it was nice and tight when we made it. There was a couple that was loose, so we actually put a piece on the end that would keep it from sliding backwards and pushing through.
By the way,
As a wedge on that end.
Yeah.
this is an example of a mortise and tendon joint that has been glued. I challenge anybody to break this.
Oh.
Go ahead. We'll call you Gorilla Man if you do.
Okay, one thing that I wanted to point out here, a piece that adds additional strength on one of those traditional mortise and tenon joints is if you pin that thing. That will make it resist any racking motion. Yet another addition of surface area. Okay, and as we continue with joints, we got yet another one. Things wouldn't be complete unless we had one of these. Okay, now we're going to get into some specialty joints that require specialty tools. We've already kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit there by talking about a biscuit joiner, but I'm going to show you some examples here. Also the use of Kreg screws and jigs. Those are used extensively in kitchen cabinetry these days. What you do is you're basically hiding where any damage is on the inside of the cabinet. Then there's the use of a router table and motor. Probably when you get into router tables, one of the more popular router motors that you'll get into is the Porter cable, based on the 7518 version of the Porter cable. It's one of the more powerful motors out there in the industry that you can put into a table, and so you can make big cuts in one pass. I think it's like a 3 1/4, 3 1/2, something like that. How they get that out of a 15 amp circuit, I'm not exactly sure, but
The most you can develop on a 15 amp circuit is 1 3/4 horsepower.
1 3/4 horse, yeah.
And I mean, that's maximum. What they say by 3 1/2 is the stall horsepower, and that's just before you pop your circuit breaker.
Yep. Yeah, so they're kind of living on the edge with this with this motor, but I've built several router tables with those motors in it, and they do work. They work quite well. Then down there on the lower left, the last one there, we're gonna Ricky and Rob are going to talk about their experiences with a Festool Domino. I'm going to touch on that as a lead-in to theirs. Okay, we talked earlier about the lock miters. You see a good example over there on the right as to the lock miter when it's apart, and then again when it's together. You do both parts off the same router bit with the same setup. And you had best be prepared for at least an hour of doing setup on the first time.
They make a jig that you can do it in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
The one I made last night took me 15 minutes.
Making the jig.
I mean, the whole thing from start to finish in 15
Yep.
minutes.
Yeah, it makes a really nice
And
joint.
Infinity makes a magnetic alignment jig.
Yeah, there's a number of different tricks out there. One is the old-fashioned way is once you get this thing adjusted, you take one of the pieces that you cut and save it. And mark it appropriately that it is your setup aid. That will get you very close.
The other problem with that bit is if you see you're cutting the wood down to a point, you need a rider or something on double face tape to the wood as a guide. Otherwise, as your bit goes through the wood, it's going to get shorter and shorter. So you need something to give you a straight edge to cut against.
One of the things that I've done in my shop that has helped me a lot is when I go cutting one of these things, or you know, basically anything involving a router bit that you have to adjust up and down, once I hit the sweet spot on making a joint for a particular thickness of wood, I will take a machinist measuring device and I will figure out where the top of the cutter is relative to the top of the table, and I will record that. That way when I have to go back sometime later to duplicate that, I've got, again, a fairly good starting point. I can do a test cut there and figure out if it's still good. If the thickness of wood changes or something like that, that's going to put you in a different category. Anyway, the result is that once you get that thing cut properly, you get a nice miter joint that you join with glue, and it's, because of the increased surface area of that, it's quite a strong joint.
Would that be something you'd use on drawers?
I think I've got another example here of this is what I was going to get into. This is one where the bit is actually called a drawer lock bit. Down there in the pictures on the bottom, it shows how you cut the face and the side. I've got a piece of furniture that I built a number of years ago, and those drawers get used on a daily basis because I keep my high reference items in that drawer. So that drawer gets opened and closed probably a dozen times a day. With the use of one router bit and a router table, I wouldn't recommend trying to freehand it with a router. Anyway, this bit does make a very effective lock miter, and you'll also notice on there that that piece down in the lower right is plywood joined to dimensional lumber. This piece that I'm talking about, that's a daily use furniture that I made, all the drawers are made out of plywood. You just get a nice face sheet on the plywood, and it looks quite attractive when you're done. Okay, we're going to discuss biscuit joints here. I think Rob's getting some examples here to show you.
I'll just put a couple samples.
Yeah.
We were playing around earlier because neither one of us brought in a example for the biscuit joint, but I brought the biscuit joiner.
I left mine on the workbench.
In the shop. I guess before we get to the biscuit joiner, we're talking about the type of joinery that was done years ago. A lot of them, the lap joints, butt joints, and then we got into stuff, and they did use dowels, pins, and stuff for long years. But our procedures going from one to the other, a lot of times we started out the whole process with some dowels where you made them your own or however you did it, and drilled 2 holes and tried to align them in a board. And I was never good at that. And one of the alternatives for that was you would drill one hole, and, you know, I have a collar on here, so when it's far, I'm not, okay, I will use it. Okay, you put a collar on, so you're only drilling so deep on it to drill your hole. And then you have the plugs that would go in there, that you would put this inside the hole that you just drilled. And you line up your other board the same size with it, put it in there and hit it together. That puts a point on it, so you know where you want to put the other one, you can drill the hole. So that was an alignment system that worked pretty good. And that was my method for years. I didn't get into the more expensive ones. I did buy them all. Okay. But you know, I mean, like I said, you started off with the dowels, and then they came out with the ones like Gerry was showing earlier, you know, that were plugs. And there was all kinds of different ones like that. The lines itself, like if you put this dowel inside a hole, and it's pretty tight, you can't really get it in. And the same thing's we're talking about with the domino. If you put glue in there, you're not going to get the glue out because there's no way for it to escape. So the lines let it come out like that when we're doing that. So, and this is Gerry, so if you have the same system so as far as pushing that together. But you have all different sizes of dowels, plugs, and everything. They're all made up now where all you got to do is pick up a package and you have the pointed thing on there, so it all matches up together. So you get them in there. And then you have doweling jigs. This is Dowel Pro kit, and then this is Dowel Quick. Yeah. But what it is, it's just a way, I'm not sure what's on this thing. Okay, you put that against the board, you on either side, you drill the hole, and then the way you know your spacing's right from the edge. It works great if you're doing something not in the middle of a board, but most of the time you're joining two pieces, it's gonna be on the edge. This one works really good. This one is a nicer version, all metal. It's never been out of the box. Yeah. But you know, I got this, and then I got different systems after that. And that's what I was leading up to. We went from the dowels of different types, and then we went to the biscuit joiner. The biscuit joiner was so much easier. You could adjust your height up and down, you know, like you'll set this on the table. And you could set, you know, a 3/4 inch wood, you know, is what I normally have it on. So you could hit it where it hits right in the middle, and you do that on both sides that you're gonna do, and then you put them together. If you're gonna do it on a flat surface, you flip this part up, and you set it down on here. Okay.
You know, it can also do them at angles.
Right, you can set your angle to whatever you want. Now, the blade on this is like a small circular saw. You see it on the end? I'm not gonna touch it because it is plugged in. But anyway, you're gonna put this on to your board. I did this earlier, but I wanted to show it during class. This has actually got the biscuit and stuff on it. You just put it in there, and you can join the one side with the other. You cut it. It does throw off a lot of sawdust all over you, but you can hold it on here. On a longboard, it's in place, but if you're not holding it there for a longer piece that's clamped down, your fingers are only going to be here. That thing only goes out that far. So I hold it onto you here like this. And as I let it go there, I pull it out a little bit, and the blade is spinning around and knocks most of the sawdust out. Otherwise, you have a hard time getting your biscuit into there. And then you just, on these, I just slop them up with a lot of glue, which is different than the dowels. You can't get much on. But they're a loose fit, and when you get ready to put this on along with the other piece on there, you've got a lot of play on it, more than what I would like. But you can align it perfectly straight. So if you get it in there, you get it straight and clamp it, they work very good. So the biscuit joint, lining it up, I guess the biggest thing on lining that up is you have play in here. You know, it goes in the center, but you got a gap on here, so you could have this on one side or the other. But when you put the other parts in there, it does swap, does a fantastic job. And that's what I used shortly after I got all the dowels. And there's certain things you have, like this is one of the smallest, this is a 0. You have 0, 5, 10, 20 different ones. And the only difference really is, on these things is how deep the blade is going to cut in is going to make a wider curve. So if you use a smaller material, that's a few inches, this works really good. But if you get something a lot smaller than that, you want to go back to the dowels or to the domino or some system like that.
When you examine one of those biscuits that are going around. What they are, they're pressed wood. They are intended to expand. Once they see the moisture in PVA glue, they just start swelling up, and that's what tightens the joint. Because of the construction of them, though, you don't have much in the way of grain, so it winds up being quite brittle. So if you got much in the way of lateral forces on a biscuit, you're gonna break it. Gerry's referring to a FF biscuit, which stands for face frame. It was made popular with 2-inch face frame for cabinets, for kitchen cabinets. And Porter Cable was the first one to come out with an FF cutter. I don't know if there's others that do it now, but that was what attracted me to it.
My Dowel does not have it.
Yeah. I don't think Dowel ever embraced that, but when you first get involved in one of these biscuit joiners, it's usually a good idea to make yourself a story tool. You cut an example of each size of biscuit. That way you can write down the dimensions on your story tool as to how deep it is, so that you can start planning ahead for special cases like what Gerry said, where you're going to maybe try to use it on a mitered joint. Okay, this shows the various components that are involved in the biscuit joining system. The tool being on the left, the biscuits in the various sizes in the center, and then the cutter bits. This shows the resulting connection when you're done cutting the biscuits on each side.